we are down to our final talk. So this is like a really, really special honor that I can welcome Dr. Christyl Johnson to deliver our final keynote of the day. Dr. Johnson is a visionary leader, and she's the Deputy Center Director for Technology and Research Investments at NASA Goddard, where she spearheads the center's research and development portfolio and shapes its future science and technology objectives. And it's really an honor for us, right? Like as we've really trying to get people that are really doing bold things in the world of technology. So she has a distinguished career spanning pivotal roles at NASA and at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. She has been instrumental in coordinating national science and technology policies, overseeing NASA's technical mission areas and field center operations. Her contributions have been integral to advanced aerospace engineering and space exploration, a topic that, as a nerd, obviously I think many of us are super passionate. And today, Dr. Johnson will enlighten us on a topic of super high importance. How can we harness technology to bring sustainable human presence to Mars? Please join me in welcoming Dr. Christyl Johnson on stage, what is going to be a captivating, enlightening conclusion of our conference. Thank you all for being here.
Good evening. You guys have to be here. You're awake, right? All right, I need you to be here with me. This is the last little hump that we got to get over, and then we'll be done for the evening and can celebrate this evening. So before we get started with some of this, I'll say, when I say the word NASA, what is the image that comes to your mind? Is it what you see behind me? Is that the image that most of you think about when you think of the word NASA? Yeah? All right, and then some of you know that NASA stands for National Aeronautics and Space Administration. So you know that we do quite a bit of work in looking at quieter jet engines. We look at how do we reduce drag and friction for aircraft. And also we do the software that's really going to improve our ability to do air traffic control. So NASA does quite a bit of additional things. But today I want to just shift your vision just a little bit and have you think very differently in the future about what you think about when you think of NASA and how you view yourselves as it relates to space. Because many of you think, NASA, space, I have nothing to do with that. Let's see if we can shift your view of that by the end of that. So, how many of you out there have heard of the Artemis mission? Artemis. Okay, there are some of you that heard about it. Artemis is our mission where we, as a global community, we have over 40 countries now that have signed the Artemis Accords. We are all going back to the moon, but not to place a flag down. We're going to have a sustainable human presence on the moon. And that's so that we can test out technologies and capabilities so that we can get ready to go to our ultimate destination, which will be Mars. And so, going to Mars is going to be very challenging for humans to actually be able to survive and thrive. We're not talking about just visiting Mars, we're talking about living there, having habitats there. And so, just for the sake of this presentation today, I want you to just suspend your current beliefs, your current ideas about what you think is possible and what you think is not possible. And let's just kind of fast forward to the year 2100. Think about 2100, that's a long time from now. At that point in time, we will have cities on Mars. Cities on Mars. So in order, I know, he's looking at me like, yeah, really? In order for that to happen, again, we have to think about everything differently today. Because if we're going to have humans living on the Mars by 2040, that's only 16 years away. We've got to really start now amping up the technology capability in order for us to get there. So things like producing oxygen and water and energy, we've got that done in spades here. But we need to be able to do it, magnify that by 10 in order for us to do it for cities on other planetary bodies. That's also going to be able to use AI to be able to manage all of the different elements of all of the energy that's going to be required and everything that's going to be needed to run those cities. Also, sustainable food sources. Right now, we have quite a bit of advanced farming and agricultural tools. But in order for us to be able to do this well on another planetary body, just imagine us being able to have a complete digital ecosystem. So being able to take the information from those digital digital farming equipment that we use today, the watering systems for the farms, all of the planting, understanding the soil, the salinity, which is the salt in the soil, knowing when you can plant and when you have to rotate your farms in order to be able to get the most nutrition out of the food that you plant. And being able to tie that to satellites in the air that are looking at the weather and being able to determine exactly when the rain is going to come so you know exactly when to water and when not to water. So many things. If we can get all of our digital systems tied together in a Skynet of sorts, then we can actually be able to manage this in a way and have a total picture of the whole ecosystem that we have never been able to have in the past. Then also you got to think about high-tech health. High-tech health is going to be absolutely critical for us to have humans living someplace else. We're going to have special sensors you place on or about the body so you can actually pull the chest and the heart out of the chest, be able to spin it around in a room, be able to peel it open so that you can see the veins and the vessels and know where there's a blockage in someone's heart and have robotic capability to be able to go in there and remove the blockage for the human to be able to survive. That's also going to require us to have advanced AI capability so that we can have digital twins of each human individual that will be traveling. So we know exactly what kind of information is necessary at your gene level to be able to go in and address specific diseases and address them with the exact medication that you need. Any kind of repertory work that needs to be done, it will be tailored to your individual body. And that's what's being started today, but we're going to have to ramp that up big time in order for us to be able to keep humans safe in the long run. And then the habitats. What are we going to live in when we take this journey? And so we'll need to really ramp up our ability to do 3D printing of habitats and also make sure that with these 3D printing, the capability to be able to build the infrastructure. How many of you saw Avatar 2, the movie? You saw Avatar 2? Do you remember in that movie where the robots were kind of building the infrastructure? You can have robots working 24 hours a day, being able to build your infrastructure. They will know when they've run out of 3D material so they can go back to the station, reload the material, whatever material it is. They'll know when their battery is low, so they go back to the charging station and squat. And we'll be able to make rapid development of the infrastructure that's going to be needed. But on top of the infrastructure, you also have to be able to have inflatable habitats. And why? Because when we are there, so many of you know Mars used to be like Earth, right? Mars used to have an environment. It used to have oceans and water. But something happened on Mars. That's why it's now this red, barren planet. And so that's one of the reasons why we as a global nation have been studying Mars with the Mars rovers, trying to do excavation and making sure that we're taking samples to understand in archaeology what happened back then so that we can make sure, since it was a very close analog to Earth, we understand what happened, and if there's a way for us to prevent that type of thing from happening here, we can do everything in our power to make that so. So, on Mars, there used to be volcanic action. And when you have a volcano, you have eruption, and the lava burrows a hole under the ground and carves out these lava tubes that we call them. So what we'll be able to do when we're trying to figure out where we're going to live, we will have robots that go down into those lava tubes. They will have cameras on the head of those robots so that we can be able to stream back to Earth in every single classroom in the whole world, and also with media, news media, so that everybody can see real time what we're seeing just as we're uncovering it. Can you imagine what we'll be able to see as we're exploring those lava tubes? What we'll be looking for is ice, because we know that some of them have ice in them. And that's where we'll be able to inflate a habitat, because we can take that water, the ice, we can melt it into water, we can purify it, and use that as our drinking source, our water source. But one of the real challenges when you're talking about streaming back to Earth, and I had a conversation with someone here in this audience earlier, Thinking about streaming information back down to Earth, there's a lag, right? There's a delay, but we want to see it as quickly as we possibly can, which means we're going to have to do something to really advance what we can about communications. And yeah, we have those pesky, laws of physics that say things like you can't travel faster than the speed of light. Some of those things really are real, but who knows? Maybe bringing quantum entanglement into the picture may be able to help us someday improve the way that we're communicating. And why is that so important? Because when we're on the surface of the moon or Mars or any place else, we have the sun that is not going to we're not going to be protected like we are here on Earth from some of the radiation and gamma rays and things that are ejected out of the surface of the sun. So we call these solar flares. Those things just spit out of the sun. And it's really dangerous radiation and gamma rays and all of that. If you're not protected completely, then it will actually fry you. So imagine going into an X-ray and having it magnified by 1,000, so you actually get fried the moment you become in contact with it. So if you're on the surface, we need to know how much time do you have before you're going to be affected by the solar flare that's traveling through the atmosphere. So we'll have to have handheld devices. And my center right now is the one that monitors the sun. So my engineers say, there's a flare that's about to happen. You have X amount of time before it's going to hit the Earth. On the East Coast, you need to make sure you're prepared because it can knock out your whole power grid on the East Coast of the United States. Or it's coming over to Europe, and it's going to affect this amount of space within Europe. Those are the kinds of indications that we have right now, but you have to have a handheld device or a visor device that lets you know how much time you have and if you have to go deeper in the ground to protect yourself from the radiation. So now, coming back to Earth, one of the great things about being a part of the space community is when you have such an incredible and very difficult and very challenging objective, you inevitably create technologies that improve the quality of Earth right here on planet Earth. And so as an example of that, how many of you have heard of the company Speedo? Speedo, yeah, that's a company that does swimsuits, right? Speedo came to NASA and said, hey, NASA, you all do quite a bit of work with friction and drag reduction. Can you help us design a swimsuit that helps to reduce friction and drag for our swimmers? And we said, sure. We helped them to develop the LZR Racer swimsuit. And the very month that it hit the market, the swimmers in the Olympics that wore our swimsuits broke 13 world records. And so that's an indication of being able to bring very diverse people together to come up with a solution that works. Also, we had in the United States, this is for us, football, professional football in the United States, and the other we call soccer. But in this particular sport, we had a high school student, young boy, was practicing football. He had a heat stroke, and he died. And so, of course, everyone is very concerned because why in the world do you have your kids outside practicing so much in that heat that they die? The very next week, we had a professional football player that also had a heat stroke and died. So then everybody's up in a tizzy saying, what in the world are you doing? And the National Football League coaches are like, how in the world are we supposed to know when someone's in that kind of trouble? Every person, when you're outside exercising in the heat, you're going to be flush, you're going to be red, you're going to be sweaty. How do we know when the person is about to die on us? So they came to NASA and said, can you help us? We said, sure. And we told them, hey, we had to develop this digital thermometer pill that our astronauts have to swallow. It goes down into the core of their body and helps us to monitor their whole system as we're making the flight going up and throughout their whole activity. We transfer that over to industry, and now they're using it for football players. They're using it for deep-sea divers, because once you go down, you get to a place where sometimes you get that confusion that goes on, and if a person doesn't know that it's time for them to come up, the people on the boat can say, oh, your core temperature's dropping below a certain level, and we can pull you up, and you don't even have to know. Also for firefighters who are in the middle of a deep fire, you get dropped in, and then all of a sudden you get a flash, and they get surrounded. If their core temperature rises above a certain level, you can send the helicopters in, drop the water, and get the whole team out. So those are very important. The last example, we had 2 doctors that came to us and said, you know what? We are having a significant problem because there's so many people that are waiting for a heart transplant. their hearts are not strong enough to pump the blood all the way to their extremities, and they're dying before they can get a heart transplant. Can you help us? And we said, sure. And so then we helped them because we deal with pumps, right? Fluid pumps, fuel pumps for our aircraft, and for other devices that we create. With that, there's not a whole lot of difference between a fuel pump and a blood pump. So we were actually able to help them by building a miniature heart pump that we can use in pediatric patients. And it actually helps them to survive long enough for them to receive their heart transplant. So we have saved thousands of lives now with the development of these devices. So with these types of things, these are only 3 examples. We have thousands of these very examples that I could share with you at the drop of a dime. What you'll notice here, though, is every single person that came to us has nothing to do with space. Absolutely nothing to do with space. But one of the great things that we've uncovered at NASA is if you really want to innovate, if you want to do something that's revolutionary, a change that is going to require really, really different thinking, you have to bring totally different minds to the table to look at your problem. If you get into a situation where you have everybody that has the same work experiences, they hang out in the same places after work, they grew up in the same places, then when you have a real problem, they're going to come to the table with very similar solutions. It's only when you get very different minds together, because all of us have lenses of life that we look through. It's the lens that you look through is based upon your life experiences. And so you need people with very different lenses looking at your problem to help you solve those challenges. So that, if we unite for the extraordinary, together we can achieve the impossible. So thank you very much for having me today. And I guess I can take a couple questions. Questions?
Right. Can we get somebody with a mic to help quickly? Otherwise, in the meantime, I can run around. But if we can get one of the volunteers with a mic, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
so while we're waiting for someone to come up with a question, I will just say that another one of the challenges that we think about, and just for the sake of diversity, the journey from Earth to Mars is going to take us 9 months. 9 months in one vehicle. And so for that being the case, we will really need, how do you deal with the mental health challenges of people being in these vehicles for 9 months? Also, during that period of time, there will be no sunlight. So there are no day and night cycles, which means your circadian rhythm is going to go crazy. Everybody's emotions will be, going crazy. So using things like virtual reality, augmented reality, will be absolutely critical. So you'll have people in their quarters, then be able to leave their quarters and go into something like a holodeck, where your body is tricked into believing that you're actually you're basking in the sun. But at the same time, you'll have to be fed vitamin D and all those things because your body is smart and knows that you can't use LED lighting to trick it into believing you're having daylight. So many challenges and fields that have nothing to do with space will have to come to the table. We will need all of us to have a group think, not a group think, to have a brainstorming session to bring the right people to the table to help us to adjust and solve these problems.
So would you, assuming all of those things will be solved, would you sign up yourself for a trip?
No. No, I'm an engineer, at my core, and so I was at NASA during the Challenger event. I was at NASA during the Columbia accident. And as a part of the team for Columbia, when you know all of the things that you have to do have to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect to the T in order for them first to be able to get off the launch pad. Because so much can get done wrong, and so much can happen when you're on the pad and you have all of those tons of explosives underneath you. Once you get off the launch pad, then you have so much that has to be right for you to have the right trajectory to get where you're going and to be able to boost yourself to get to the final destination. But then once you're there and you leave, coming back into our Earth's atmosphere is so incredibly hard. You have to come in at exactly the right angle, at exactly the right speed, or else you'll bounce off the atmosphere. And then you're gone in a different trajectory, and you may or may not have enough fuel to be able to circle back around and try to come in again. So there's so much that has to be perfect and has to be done well in order for you to go and come back. And for me, I'm really happy on the ground. I'm really happy giving them my expertise to make sure that they go up safely and come back.
I love the saying that Elon always says. He said he'd love to die on Mars, but ideally not on impact.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so you're rather staying here than
Definitely.
relocate to
Definitely.
Mars.
There's so much fun to be had here on Earth and so much to explore right here, which is why we got to get it right here so we don't have to go to the moon or Mars.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Okay, I think we have now somebody with a mic over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk, first of all.
Sure.
But yeah, also, I totally agree that you need diversity and kind of support from different
Yeah.
fields. And like many here, I guess, I'm a software engineer, and what
Yes.
we're used to is open source kind of help,
Yeah.
right? So I was wondering if NASA has some kind of open source projects that we can contribute to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can talk about that.
Oh, yes. NASA has a ton of open source capability that we offer to the public and that we receive from the public because there's so many different aspects of this that have to be right. Entertainment. I mean, think about what has to happen during that 9-month journey, and once you're on the moon, how are we keeping people entertained? There's so much that has to be done coding-wise, software-wise, to get this right. And we need software people badly as a part of our team. So any of you all that are sharp and smart in software and want to work with some of the other smart and sharp people around the world, those are folks we really need.
Awesome. Do we have other questions?
Yes,
So
I
just
have one here.
Okay. Hi.
So you mentioned
I don't know where you
Yeah,
are.
we can't
Here.
see you, but
Oh,
we
okay,
can hear
there
you.
you are. Go ahead.
so you mentioned melting ice for drinking on Mars. Do you
Yes.
think that because Mars was once very similar to Earth, it could potentially pose dangers such as viruses, and how could we deal with the danger there?
Yeah, so that is a really, really good question. So think about the fact that Mars is very, very, very cold. And so many of the viruses and bacteria probably do not survive unless, of course, there's something really, really deep below. And if you think about, what is the movie called where they, with the dinosaurs and things?
Jurassic Park.
That's it, where they had them under the ground and then they were able to bring them up, and you can see that they're very well preserved and all of that. But in thinking about that, okay, let's just go with that and say if you do come across a bacteria or virus, you know how we handled it in our world when we had COVID. We did not do such a good job. And COVID was just a strain of the flu. Now imagine what happens if you don't have any analog. You don't have any way of connecting it to something and a potential cure for it. We really need AI, generative AI, machine learning for us to be able to put something in, have it run several analyses very, very quickly, and not just determine what's the closest analog to it, but then what's the best mechanism for us to get it into our human system the fastest, so that you can arrest that bacteria very quickly. So is it something that you have to put under your tongue in order to get in very quickly? Is it something you inject into the arm? Is it something you inhale? All of those things, we will need digital capability in order for us to be able to analyze it quickly and act in order to be able to save lives. So very, very good question.
Amazing. Okay, I think we have time for like 2-3 more questions. If we have more. And over there, please.
I have
Okay.
one, if you don't
Sure.
mind. Actually, two.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember the movie Cars. It's
No.
kind of yeah. They have a saying there, and they go pit stop. So you mentioned that it's going to be a 9-month journey, if I'm not mistaken. What about pit stops? Are you going to have like something in space that we can pit stop to?
There's certainly a capability for us to go to moon and other places. Well, I won't say other places. I know that we can go to the moon. You have to really plan for every single pit stop, because every environment you go to outside of the Earth is its own thing that you have to take into consideration, and you have to prep for that. You have to practice for it. The people that are there need to know exactly what to expect and how to handle themselves there. So we are already going to be making sure that those people are ready on the moon, and then studying what's going to be necessary for Mars, because we already have robots on the surface there.
Right.
But all these other places, unless we have a gateway, which we're planning to have, which flies to these different places, then allows one piece of it to come off and go down to the surface of it, those that's a way that we can kind of address what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, I
Yeah.
see. And the second one, I don't know if you recall, but it was an award winner that pretty much studied human species, going back to Homo sapiens or something like that. So pretty much he came up with the theory that we are not very much different, that those genes were kind of like combined, and this is how we came up to Earth in the human-shaped form that we are. So it wasn't necessarily like a chronological human evolution. It was more like combining them. So my question is, how do you see human evolution on Mars due to different environment changes? Because we're going to adapt eventually, biologically speaking.
Yeah, so I do not know the answer to that question, but I would say, based upon the fact that Mars is a very different environment and you do not have any gravity, right now, the fact that we have gravity here on Earth and our astronauts even going to the International Space Station, their body changes drastically. There was a twin study that was done for our Kelly brothers. One stayed on the ground, one went up. And the differences in the chemical composition, the muscle structure, the bones, what happens to your bones, what happens to your eyes, and the fluid in your eyes and how your eyes actually work when you're in space for long periods of time. There are lots of changes that take place when there's no gravity. And so when you're on Mars, our bodies will have to adjust.
Yeah.
We will have to adapt in order for us to be able to thrive there. So there will be lots of adaptation that takes place, but then also lots of mitigation that has to take place before you go, so that it won't be too drastic of a change, because then your bodies may not be able to handle that for a long period of time because you weren't built for that.
Right. So do you think it's going to be technology that is going to involve evolution, or is going to be just humans doing their own thing pretty much?
I mean, technology is going to be core in all of it. It's going to have to be, because we won't be able to go without critical core technology that will enable it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really cool. All right. More questions?
Two
Sorry,
over there. Oh,
I have one more question.
there.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Firstly, thank you for this really interesting presentation.
You're welcome.
One really incredible thing that I came to me was the fact that up to year 2100 we will be able to live on Mars. So I was wondering if you can tell us, if you know, and if you can tell us a more specific timeline for what the events will be up to that point, like, yeah.
Nope.
I think what people are asking, we heard yesterday about human longevity.
Yeah.
They figure, can they live long enough to go to
yeah.
Mars?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely going to be some improvements in longevity. That's happening right now. And so that's one of the areas that we really need experts to help us tap into. We're doing some work with astronauts and others to help with that. But that's going to be important. So the timeline going to Mars, we've got to make sure that we understand what we need to do and get it right before we're actually there. Because if it takes so long to get there, you make a mistake, there's nobody coming to help you. You're on your own. And so we know that at the end of next year, we're going to have humans going back to the moon, our first woman and others on the surface of moon. And so that's the first piece. Keep in mind, if you're going to go all the way to Mars, you're going to have deliveries there before humans can even show up. So you're going to have to send out lots of equipment and all of the elements that you're going to need. So when the humans arrive, they'll be able to put it together. So there's a lot of infrastructure work that needs to be done before humans will even have a chance there. The radiation effects are going to be significant, so being able to just conquer the travel piece is going to be huge. And then making sure you have all that you need, air, water, all of that. The little things you need to survive have to be addressed as well.
Do you think anybody here in the audience can still make it to Mars?
I will say that for me, and one of the things that I'm excited about is I really am looking forward to creating a challenge because the people, even the 2040 vision, the 2040 execution will not be done by people like me. They'll be done by people who are in college today. So why not engage our youth, the college students today, in helping us address the challenges of tomorrow? So I'd like to bring the NASA and global community, space community together and throw down the gauntlet. These are the biggest challenges we're going to face in the future. And so many of the students don't know that you can't do certain things. They just go off and do it. And so that's how you disprove theories and everything else. So having the students with a competition, partnered with many of the big commercial companies together, and being able to have them and their whole university come together as a team and propose something, not just your engineering department or not just the software developers, they have to bring the business department together. They have to, all of the different departments, so they can come up with a real proposal that they could actually commercialize their product and win up to $2 million or so to be able to jumpstart that and get their companies off the ground and start developing something that they can sell back to us. And so getting the students involved, they're the ones that are going to be executing the mission for the moon, and they and their children will be the ones who will populate Mars.
All right, that's a clear timeline for all of us to
Yeah.
follow.
Absolutely.
Moon and Mars
Moon
one
and
generation
Mars.
later.
Yeah.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. When I was younger, I was always saying like I wanted to get married in space. I got married before in space, so I always hoped that would happen. So I was always a bit over optimistic on timelines.
Oh my goodness.
That was a life goal of younger me. So I haven't gone to space yet, but I'm still hopeful
You
that
can still do it.
I know that is like,
can still do it.
especially the definition now, parabolic flight is
Yeah.
like $5,000. So at least that part is very
You can do
achievable.
it.
So there's different levels of space, is what I learned now.
Exactly.
So I'm still very important to keep dreaming on that. Anyway, we have
There were
maybe
two over there.
yeah. Let's take the final two questions. Sorry, I don't see anything. I'm like literally blind in here.
This man.
First of all, thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And I want to ask a question. Assuming we are going to go on Mars with a Starship by SpaceX, how do you think the first landings will be, and how dangerous the first people that will go there, the dangers that they will face, and how is NASA going to encourage people to go there to build those bases that you talked about? Because the terrain is not something built. It's not something straight where you're going to land the rocket and you'll be 100% sure it's going to be a fine landing.
Yeah, so I will say my name is Christyl, but I do not have a crystal ball. So I don't know how the landing is going to go. I mean, we project, we do all that we can to do the analysis up front, make sure that we have the trajectories, make sure that all of our simulations show that we have a good landing, but you can never be guaranteed. There is never 100% surety in anything that we do. And so I don't know how that landing is going to go, but I can say that there's probably a 99% chance that it will go well, because I know that we have the smartest people in the world working together, especially with 40 countries right now, and there will be significantly more by the time we get to that, working together to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Final question over there.
There we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the talk.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask what's your take on the Fermi paradox and whether you think that extraterrestrial life exists or not.
I could not understand that.
The
Say
Fermi paradox.
Oh, okay. I am not familiar with that.
So I think the paradox goes, as far as I know, and please correct me, is if there's like intelligence out there, why have they not discovered us?
Oh, they have. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information out there that has been declassified that, I mean, and if you look at and search on Google and listen to astronauts that have flown and that have seen things that are difficult for them to explain, you can come to some conclusions on your own.
But if there exists alien life, why hasn't there been found a civilization that's more advanced than us?
Oh, well, That's because you might have to travel a lot further than our vehicles will take us today. A lot further than our vehicles will take us. And so we have been using our telescopes, our advanced telescopes, to find what we call exoplanets, which are Earth-like planets that we know have the ability potentially to sustain a life form or another. But advanced life planets probably would exist outside of our ability to travel to. And so you can't discover those things if you're just going to sit on the ground and look up. You have to actually get out there and experience it for yourself. And that's why we're developing all kinds of capability to travel outside of our planet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So what do you think is like, basically like, so you said like moon is almost a sure thing. So Mars is the
Oh,
hard
yeah.
problem.
Yeah, moon is a sure thing. We are going to the moon. And we have all of these countries coming together to guarantee that we are going to the moon and we're going together. And so that is not a question. It's just a matter of how many of the right things, elements, can we bring together as fast as is necessary for us to make this happen. And getting the commitment from each of the governments across all of these countries to be able to work together. And right now, 40 of them have said, we're in, and we're committed to this.
Thank you so much for taking us to moon, taking us to Mars and beyond, and allowing us all to dream a little bit. I got inspired. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Good.
Thank you so much, Christyl. It was lovely to have you here. Big applause.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.